Jones Act, the Merchant Marine Act. If your place of employment is for a business on land yet you sustain work-related injuries, the workers' compensation laws for that particular state apply. That's simply not the case when your work is offshore. The Jones Act, also known as the Merchant Marine Act, is a federal statute enacted in 1920 which mainly regulates maritime commerce between U.S. ports. However, a portion of the Act also enables maritime workers to file for benefits from their employers for work-related injuries due to their negligence. This applies whether you are a captain or mate, a deckhand or cook or bartender. If you contribute at least 30% of your work time to the work of a vessel while on navigable waters and you sustain injuries, you can apply for benefits. This includes lost wages, medical expenses, as well as compensation for pain and suffering. In some instances, offshore workers may also be entitled to punitive damages if it can be proven that the employer demonstrated a willful and wanton disregard for the safety of employees. A good Jones Act lawyer can put together a strong suit and get you the compensation you deserve. Limitation Liability Act and your maritime injury lawyer. The Limitation Liability Act protects vessel owners from having to pay compensation for an injury or death that exceeds the value of their craft. This can be bad news for a maritime worker with a claim. Once a vessel owner files a limitation of liability suit, the proceedings for all claims are stayed. This stay lasts until they consolidate the hearings into a single proceeding where those with competing claims may have to accept pro-rated settlements. Additionally, limitation liability suits disallow jury trials. Fortunately, some personal injury suits are exempt. These include suits for wages owed to seamen as well as maintenance and cure claims. If a limitation liability suit has been filed to counter your claim, you need a qualified maritime injury lawyer. Houston is home to one of the best firms in the business, Cobos Law Firm. Moreover, we provide a free initial consultation to help you understand your rights. Longshoremen and Harbor Workers Compensation Act. The LHWCA is similar to the Jones Act. It provides an avenue for maritime workers to receive compensation for lost wages, medical care, and vocational rehabilitation due to an injury sustained on the job. Whether workers are covered under the Jones Act or the LHWCA is strictly tied to the maritime law and maritime injury cases. Admiralty law exists to help injured seamen recover from injuries sustained during work. Without these laws, injured seamen would be forced to act independently to counteract any suffering sustained at work. Whenever a maritime worker becomes sick or injured, the owner of the vessel must reimburse their losses. Maritime attorneys refer to this as maintenance and cure. Essentially, this means that the employer must provide for the affliction until the worker recovers fully. Courts view this obligation as a duty that the owner owes any worker aboard their vessel. Moreover, seamen are eligible to recover full wages for the length of the voyage during which they sustained the illness or injury. Oftentimes, their employment contract dictates the number of unearned wages they are eligible to receive. Death on the High Seas Act. Jones Act. The Merchant Marine Act. Limitation Liability Act. Longshoremen and Harbor Workers Compensation Act. Death on the High Seas Act. Commercial maritime work is dangerous. Occasionally the negligence or wrongful act of an employer or coworker can result in a worker's death. Under the Death on the High Seas Act, DOHSA, if a loved one working on a commercial vessel died at least 3 nautical miles from a U.S. shoreline, the spouse, parent, child or another dependent relative may recover fair compensation for lost wages, funeral expenses, and costs for counseling. For a claim to be successful, a maritime attorney must prove negligence on the part of the shipowner or a fellow worker. Even if the decedent may have contributed to his or her own loss of life, some compensation may still be warranted. When in need of a knowledgeable and experienced maritime injury lawyer, Houston residents know they can trust Cobos Law Firm to provide reliable, strategic representation. The history of maritime law and admiralty law. Admiralty law, now known as maritime law, governs incidents that occur at sea as well as the conduct of vessels. Many countries have their own laws that cover seamen, the conveyance of passengers, and maritime commerce. However, multilateral treaties established many internationally recognized aspects of admiralty law. Because ships were one of the earliest means of transportation over long distances, these rules date back to ancient Greece. Later, Eleanor of Aquitaine brought the concept of a legal authority that regulates maritime concerns to the West. She learned of this concept during the Second Crusade while accompanying King Louis VII of France to the Mediterranean. British Admiralty courts set the basis for the term admiralty law as they presided over maritime issues as a separate entity from the common law courts. Because the United States based its judicial system on that of Britain, it incorporated admiralty laws soon after the ratification of the Constitution. Maritime law and jurisdiction. Originally, jurisdiction over maritime matter went to federal courts. Today, many maritime injury cases are heard in either state or federal courts. The Saving to Suitors Clause in Title 28 of the United States Code, 28 U.S.C. Section 1333, established this option. However, the exception to this is any case that involves maritime property. These cases must be tried in a federal court. The most important thing to remember is that when a state court presides over a maritime case, they have to apply maritime law, not state law. This means that you need an experienced maritime injury lawyer. Houston residents often trust the Cobos law firm to handle maritime cases. Our strategic mindset in pursuit of your best interests makes us a strong advocate. Contact our firm today for a free case evaluation with our maritime law attorneys. What are the features of admiralty law? Admiralty law established the foundation of the legal tenets that govern the sea as well as maritime workers. These basic tenets set a precedent for our Houston maritime lawyers to help you hold negligent parties accountable. This includes the following. Seamen and creditors owed wages have the right to have a maritime lien against a vessel, providing a security interest to ensure payment. Rescuers have the right to claim a maritime salvage award when they recover property that was lost at sea. What does a Houston maritime injury lawyer cover? Oftentimes, maritime work is dangerous, and the injuries seamen sustain are not covered by typical workers' compensation laws of a state. A Houston maritime injury lawyer can represent seamen in various claims such as barge and cargo ship accidents, commercial fishing accidents, shipyard accidents, drilling rig and oil platform accidents, wrongful death, and more. When looking for a maritime injury lawyer, Houston area residents recognize Cobos Law Firm as an industry leader in helping seamen recover costs for injuries that have impacted their ability to work, for medical bills and rehab costs as well as pain and suffering. When you work with a Houston maritime injury lawyer from our firm, our attorney advocates for your best interests and hold those responsible for your injuries accountable. A Houston maritime injury lawyer can help recover full costs for maritime accidents. Our law office in Houston, Texas, offers legal representation for cases involving maritime injuries. Andrew Cobos is a Texas lawyer who represents clients after they have sustained work-related injuries or illnesses. After a serious accident, you might incur an array of different costs. These costs have an immediate impact on your life. However, that impact can last for years to come. Often, these immediate effects are quite obvious. Inability to work, expensive bills, pain and suffering, rehabilitation. When it comes to maritime injuries, it's not always easy to understand the long-term impact of an injury. Your Houston maritime lawyer advocates for you to recover crucial damages that can help in the event of lifelong medical attention. Moreover, it is hard to know the long-term effects, which means you need to be prepared. Maritime law, maintenance and cure. An offshore, work-related injury can be devastating, not just because of the injury itself, but also for your ability to continue to meet your financial obligations. Maintenance and cure laws help to ensure the injured party's medical and rehabilitation bills are paid as well as basic day-to-day living expenses during the recuperation period. If you have been sidelined by a maritime injury and are in need of a maritime injury lawyer, Houston has a top legal resource in Cobos Law Firm. A Houston maritime injury lawyer from Cobos Law understands maintenance and cure laws and what is required to put together a solid case for you in court. Rest assured, when you engage a Houston maritime injury lawyer from Cobo's law firm, you are in good hands. How a Jones Act lawyer can help you. As any good Houston maritime injury lawyer knows, the Jones Act compensates injured maritime workers for lost earnings, medical expenses, and pain and suffering. The compensation in each of these categories, however, is not a simple matter to determine. How does one fairly determine future raises, promotions, and benefits? What future medical costs might arise from an injury? How do you put a price on mental anguish? If you sustain a work-related injury while working as a seaman in navigable waters, you need an advocate. You need the advice and representation of a personal injury lawyer who understands maritime law and the Jones Act in particular. When you're in need of a maritime injury lawyer, Houston is well served by the Cobo's law firm. Our experts know how to fairly determine and present these unknowns in court in order to get you the maximum compensation you deserve. Contact our personal injury law firm in Houston, Texas, today for a free case evaluation. When you need to hold people accountable, our maritime attorneys are ready to advocate for you.